Hello and welcome. This is Professor Johnson, and if you're watching this, then I assume that you were a participant in the Pointer Overflow CTF 2023. If so, then I thank you for your participation. I hope you will join us next year, and what follows will be essentially the solutions for the 2023 challenges. So we'll begin in order here. We'll do the crypto section first. The first challenge, 100 points, unquestioned and unrestrained, solved by 1,042 of our participants. This one was meant to be an easy warm-up. Essentially, what it's asking you to do is to solve a riddle more than anything else. I give you the flag, but it's encoded. All you have to do is figure out which method was used. Luckily, it's a common one. So it's base 64 encoded, so if we just decode that, there you have your flag. Next, we have our 200-point crypto challenge, a pale violet light. And in this one, it is a reverse RSA challenge. I give you E, I give you N, and I give you C. C is our ciphertext, N is our modulus, and E is our public key. And with those three things, you can derive the private key and then decrypt the ciphertext. So here we have a simple Python script that one can use to solve such challenges. I happen to keep this one handy so that I can plug in different variables for different problems or challenges that I may need to develop and or solve. And so I have the variables assigned here with E, our 5039, that's our public key, our modulus, and our ciphertext here. Now in the process of deriving our public and private keys with RSA, essentially what we do is we identify a P and a Q. Those will be multiplied together. Now, if we did not have P and Q via the factoring calculator, it is the first part in our script here. We have over here a print factors, which accepts an argument, essentially calculates factors between 1 and then the argument plus 1. That gives us our results, and we can plug in those. Either way we get them is fine. Once we have P and Q in the normal key generation process, P minus 1 times Q minus 1 will get us what's known as phi. Since we have the public key and phi, we can calculate D, which is our private key. And now that we have our private key, we can decrypt our ciphertext. So we feed in our ciphertext, decode the flag, and provide output. And I'll run it now so you can see it for yourself. Okay, so the output that we're getting here, first of all, we get 1, okay? Because, of course, 1 and the number itself are going to be factors of it. And the only other two that we get are 5807 and 5861. So we could have just simply used Python in order to derive our P and Q in this fashion. Then we calculate phi, which would be 5806 times 5860, and we get our phi result there, as you see. And then we can use that to derive our private key. It would be the inverse of that. And then we have M, which is our message. RSA doesn't encrypt characters directly. We have to encode them in some fashion. So we just encode them into decimal format, and then we just convert them back after we decrypt into the ASCII character. And there we have our flag. Our Crypto 200 challenge was solved by 491 of our participants, and our Crypto 3 challenge, which was expected to be more difficult, was actually solved by more participants with 822. Crypto 3 is missing and missed. Now, this one, I admit, in hindsight, is a much easier challenge. I was relying for this category on this being a slightly more obscure method, but I think I tipped my hand too much with the hint text here. When I say a little cerebral fornication, well, it kind of only brings one thing to mind, right? So if you did not get this one, this is a cipher known as a brainfuck cipher, which results in this very peculiar and particular output. So if I place that, just copy and paste it here into our interpreter with no argument, it very easily translates the flag for us, as you see here. Next, we are moving on to our miscellaneous challenges. The 100-point challenge is sight without vision. Our miscellaneous challenges are where I put challenges that I'm not really quite sure, what else to do with. They probably could easily go in another category. Sometimes I'll use miscellaneous challenges as a way to include challenges that maybe the category is already full, but I just really want to include it. Or maybe it's just a little bit out there or requires something other than traditional cybersecurity skills to solve. So in Sight Without Vision, for example, it's simply a riddle. The solution you seek is near. I'll give you some clues. You have one too. You carry it everywhere you go, but it is not heavy. It can be clean or it can be mud. It doesn't change how a rose smells, and you will need the link there and those characters to complete it. So the spelling of mud with capital M and 2 Ds. There's a very popular idiom, at least in English, and I know not all of our participants use English as a first language, so this does perhaps make things more difficult for you than it otherwise would. But there's a popular idiom here, at least in American English: my name is Mud, or your name will be Mud. Which is a reference to a historical character here in the United States, and was a physician that harbored John Wilkes Booth as he fled following the assassination of President Lincoln. But even if you don't understand that idiom, the second clue, it doesn't change how a rose smells, is a reference to, I think, a more universally known pop culture reference, which is the Shakespeare play Romeo and Juliet. A rose by any other name smells just as sweet. And the rest of the riddle I feel is fair too. You have one too, you carry it everywhere you go, but it's not heavy, refers to your name. So the answer to the clue is name. And so if we take the name of the challenge, we can follow the link provided and enter it into that, just at level 1, and we receive this text. The second clue, we will need this. So if we take this and format it as we do the other flags, then we have our correct solution. Our miscellaneous 200 challenge, here you see a passerby solved by 659 of our participants. Simple task, solve the maze to find the flag. The password is POCTF 2023. So if we open that PDF, we do indeed see that there is a maze. Here is one side, here is another side. It really does not matter which direction you start from. The flag will be the same either way. Now, with this challenge, it was very important for me to pick a flag that had a lot of repeating characters. Otherwise, it would be extremely easy to work our way through the maze. So I need essentially a lot of the same characters, and we ended up doing that just fine. So if we follow the maze, POCTF, curly bracket, UWSP. Oh, we're already hitting here a dead end. So POCTF, curly bracket, UWSP underscore PR3TTY underscore BU7. Oh, sorry, did I say T? 77 underscore PETTY underscore BU7 underscore PR377Y curly bracket. So the solution in LeetSpeak is POCTF UWSP, pretty but petty but pretty. Our miscellaneous 300 challenge was solved by only 10 of our participants, and I admit this is a dastardly challenge. It was designed to be difficult. I really wanted this one to be hard, and it clearly was. There's a lot of text here. I ended up having to give several clues to the 10 people who solved this in order to get them to do so. I don't feel that it was unfair. I just feel it was very difficult. So what we have here is What we have here is ciphertext that has been encrypted using 3 different steps. And the issue, and the reason that this is so hard, is because you don't know if you've made a mistake unless you get good results at the end. And if you don't, it's kind of impossible to tell at which step you may have made your mistake. That said, I feel it's fair because there's a lot of clues here that I think you could pick up on, right? And you ought to know roughly what kind of output you should be getting at each step, right? We begin with our ciphertext, okay? And it's this here. It's a strange collection of characters, to be sure. Definitely a little odd. Now, that ciphertext I would arrive at after. It would be my last step. It would be after I've already done the other methods. But if you want to reverse it, of course, you have to start there. So the first step says, my last step is your first. You see the ciphertext that results. Unique character set, no. The only problem is I had to call out which characters were actual numbers and which weren't. Then there's those pesky delimiters. That's the only clue you'll get, except that you should observe that the stories told are all about money seekers, not about money finders. The final line there is a quote from a book from which this cipher method is found. It is Edgar Allan Poe's Gold Bug, and hence this is known as a gold bug cipher. All right, now the issue with a gold bug cipher is that they use a distinct character set, certainly, but some... I mean, it's a simple substitution cipher, but it uses a unique character set. But some of the substitutions are alpha for numeric, which means that I have a little bit of an issue. Because our flag is in leet speak, some of our characters are meant to be numbers. So any numbers that manage to persist throughout all of these stages, I needed some way to inform participants, to give them a chance, which of these characters were meant to represent letters and which are actually numbers. I do say that in the clue. Unique character set, no. The only problem is I had to call out which characters were actual numbers and which weren't. I do that in our ciphertext by prefixing every actual number with the pound symbol. This doesn't change the length. Every single method in this case was a simple substitution cipher, so it's just 3 simple substitution ciphers. If we count the characters POCTF, curly bracket, UWSP, underscore, and then we have 6, which represents a letter. Then we have the number symbol or pound symbol, and 3, which represents that should be treated as a 3, underscore character. Then we have another pound symbol and a 4, so that's to be treated as a 4 for the next step. A 7, which is to be treated as a 7 for the next step. Our $, underscore, and so on and so forth. For example, here we have #38. This indicates that the 3 should be treated as an actual number for the next step, but the 8 is substituted in for a letter. Now, if we do that, and we translate it and decode it from Goldbug into our next ciphertext, we get our ciphertext converted to this plain text string, which is, of course, still encrypted. So now we cross paths, and my second step is your second step. Funny how things stick in our heads sometimes. When I encrypted this step, I recalled my friend Vinny from high school. I still remember his number after all of these years, 7427264. A real king, that guy. Now the clues here are Vinny from high school, the phone number, and a real king, that guy. If you manage to figure this out, Vinny refers to a Vinnier cipher. And the phone number here refers to the key, which can be derived by decoding the key on a phone number pad. So if I enter that number into a tool that's meant to derive words from phone numbers, we can see that we arrive at only one complete 7-letter word, which is Pharaoh, a real king, that guy. So if I copy our ciphertext from the last step and decode it with our key, Pharaoh, I get our next and last ciphertext. All right. The next clue My first step, your last step. This is another simple substitution cipher. They all are. The clues here, I learned this technique while studying under Dr. Bronghorst at Gronsfeld. He liked to post little puzzles for students to consider on the blackboard, but would never actually explain how to solve them. Apparently, he never realized it's not enough to just look at a problem, you have to say a thing or two about it as well. Unless you can get 2 for 1 or even 3, most things in life come better in pairs. Consider the key to this last step, for example, which is encoded to hide the real number values in the key. Your clues as to the method that is derived here is Dr. Bronkhorst, Gronsfeld, the fact that there's a numeric key, and that should point you to the type of cipher that's used. So if we try to decode this, the Gronsfeld cipher, also known as the Bronkhorst cipher, was invented by Jose de Bronkhorst, Earl of Gronsfeld. It takes a numeric key. Now, the numeric key is not the numbers that you are provided. As I say here, consider the key to this last step, for example, which is encoded. So I tell you it is encoded to hide the real number. Your clues on how to decode the key are also here in the challenge. You have to say a thing or two about it as well. Unless you can get 2 for 1 or even 3, most things in life come better in pairs. Now, originally, this key here, the encoded key, was not paired up, as you see here. It was one long string. I made this change because it seemed like people needed a little bit of help. I also added a hint at another point because, again, even with that, people didn't seem to understand what was expected of them. So I added a hint. Wow, this challenge sure is proving to be a major challenge in the 2023 contest, or should I say, Pointer Overflow 0033. Now, with all of that, hopefully, you've been able to figure it out, but if not, here is the secret. We need to say the numbers. And that gives us our key. 1 3, 2 1s, 1 3, 2 1s, 3 2s, 2 1s, and 1 9. Meaning that our key is 1 3, 2 1s, 1 3, 2 1s, 3 2s, 2 1s, and 1 9. If we take that key and our final ciphertext, then we should be able to decode. And there we have our flag. Moving on to our forensic challenges. Our forensic 100 challenge solved by 435 of our participants, if you don't remember me. So here we have a PDF file. The PDF file seems to have problems. It is corrupted. I'm not sure what it used to be, but that's not important. I know it contains the flag, but I'm sure that you can find it and drag it out of the file somehow. This is a 2-step flag, as you will find it partially encoded. For this, you don't actually have to use any major forensic tools or forensic suites. Should be able to get this one with any old hex reader, and here I happen to be using File Analyzer. Let's do a string search, and if we do that, then we see this must be our flag. We have a string here, POCTF, UWSP, and then as it says, it is encoded. You can tell because there are no values greater than F, and we have a mixture of alphanumeric characters. It must be hex encoding, and so if we decode it from hex to ASCII, we get our flag. Our forensics 200 challenge solved by 298 of our participants, a petty wage in regret. Here's a very interesting image. The flag has been broken up into several parts and embedded within it, so it will take a variety of skills to assemble it. So for your image forensic needs, there are many tools that are out there, but for my money, there is simply none that compares to good old forensically. Jonas Wagner, thank you so much for all you've done here. This is Blue Plate Special by Jeff Lee Johnson. really taken with the image. I really like it, so I want to make sure I give credit where it's due. One of the reasons why I used it is because I love images like this, where at first all seems to be fine, and the longer you look at it, the more you see popping out at you. And I hoped it would be distracting enough that it might make it just a little bit more difficult to do this. But if you are looking at the image, then you most likely will be able to see at least some anomalies visually in it, and that's where we should begin. So we can see, perhaps, if you have a keen eye, you might see some shapes, but you might even have a keen enough eye that you can detect some characters here. So let's go ahead and dig into it then. With Forensically, we can enhance these visual differences, and we can do so by starting with noise analysis. So noise analysis, that gets us pretty much where we want to be. But error level analysis, if we tweak it just enough, I don't know if this is coming through on the recording, but I can very clearly see on my screen that we have : P2/2:. I did mention that the flag would be broken up into multiple parts. Clearly, this is part 2 of 2. Below that, I can see _17_F1257. So we know that it ends in it first. Since we found part 2, we now need to find part 1, and it's probably easier than you thought it was. If you're in Forensically, of course, if you're analyzing an image, you're going to want to check the metadata. There is a limited amount that is displayed here. You may also throw this into a program like File Analyzer. And if we do that, we similarly see that we have very little to go on here. The best tool to use in this case is either an EXIF reader, something dedicated to the task, or you could simply use the native view here. So if we just look at the properties of that file and we go to the Details tab, we can see much of the metadata that's attached to the image. In File Analyzer and Forensically, we didn't see a comment tag, but here indeed we do, and we just need to get it out of there. So 3A. If we do a strings scan in File Analyzer, just like we did for the PDF for the 100 level challenge, this time we're not going to see a POCTF, but now that we know we're looking for a 3A figure, here it is. And 3A, etc. Once again, looks like it's hex encoded. We've got no characters higher than an F, and it's alphanumeric. And indeed, it translates to : P1 of 2, : POCTF, curly bracket, UWSP, the world had it first, is the complete flag. We have our Forensics 300 challenge, solved by only 104 of our participants. In this case, you're provided a disk image. It contains several files that were deleted prior to imaging. To find the flag, we're going to need to bring some of them back from the dead. The flag is actually broken up between the 2 of them. Carve the files out of the image and restore any missing file headers to find the pieces to reassemble. So I've given you pretty much everything that you could possibly want to know about what you need to do here. I tell you, you need to carve the files out of the image and you need to restore missing file headers. So if you rely on a forensic tool to do your carving for you, you're going to run into issues, right? I made it so that you'll certainly be able to carve a couple of the images that you need, but you're not going to be able to get all of them because some of them are missing file headers. Let me show you how you can solve something like this. All right, so here I am in Autopsy, my preferred open source forensic suite, and I have added that disk to it. Autopsy, of course, is going to try and carve files for me. That's part of the intake process, as long as that's enabled. And I do not specify in the clues what kind of file I'm looking for. It says to find the flag, we're going to need to bring some of them back from the dead. The flag is actually broken up between 2 of them. So we know that there's going to be 2 files on this disk that will contain part of the flag. Now, we can, of course, hope that the flag is in plain text and not encoded in any fashion. The Clue doesn't mention that it's encoded, but that's always a possibility. We can do a string search, CTF, curly bracket. And we do indeed get some results back. Got a couple of files here that look like they are promising candidates. We have a JPEG, which is busted. POCTF, not the end. All right then. Well, the file headers on this one are intact, but that's our clue at the bottom here. POCTF, this is not the end. So the file headers are intact, but we don't have an EOF marker. So we're missing part of this file. We have an underscore PDF, where we can see this says POCTF 0.5C. And here is that same string in the original. This is the R file from the recycling bin. I did mention in the clue that the files were deleted, quote unquote deleted, prior to imaging. So they would be in the recycling bin or in unallocated space. So the string search helps us to locate the files, but we need to narrow down in order to get the flag out. We're going to have to, as the clues say, carve them and deal with them. So let's carve this. We don't know yet if we only need to add our EOF or if we're actually missing data. So, and yet, if I take a look at where the directory that holds those carved files, I can see that there's something on it. This is another clue for you. This tells you that the image has an embedded thumbnail. All I'm viewing here on the icon is the thumbnail image. Now, I could probably extract that thumbnail and still more or less see the flag, but it's not going to be very high resolution, and the challenge is intentionally designed so that the white text on the black background, if blown up, will be much less legible than it otherwise would be. So many of you did come to me saying that you were able to carve the thumbnail, but you weren't able to get the image itself. And I suspect that if you were one of those people, it's probably because you were using an automated tool. An automated file carver looks for file signatures, and if necessary, or if the file format has it, it will look for an end of file, an EOF marker, and will carve it out. Otherwise, it's looking for markers that are in the file system, that are in the file table. So you can try and get this information from the thumbnail, but you're gonna have a rough time. If we want to open this image and view that flag in a more an easier fashion, other than just trying to extrapolate from the thumbnail, then we're going to need to repair it. So we'll need to use a hex editor. And when we import it into a hex editor, we can see the file now more closely. We could have seen this in Autopsy, but we didn't. But we can see that here we have some EXIF data that's attached to it. And within that is embedded a clue. It says clue 2. Now, in Autopsy, if you recall, we did see here our PDF had this tagged at the top to help us find that file. POCTF 0.5C. But now that we have seen our clue, and that's clue 2, let's see if we can find clue 1. There's a doc file. Missing header, JFIF. All right, we have another file here. This is the same part file here. And it was a deleted file. Again, the clue was that they were deleted prior to imaging. Let's extract this. So if they were deleted, quote unquote, deleted prior to imaging, the recycle bin is where we're going to find all of this. And our doc file here, clue 1, missing header, and indeed we are missing the header here. This is clearly a JPEG file, and clearly that is not a JPEG file signature. So let's repair this one. ffd8ff. File, save, and it is not, in fact, a doc file. A file extension for forensics is irrelevant. It just tells the operating system, well, it tells Windows, not even every operating system relies on this, but Windows relies on file extensions to tell it what program should handle certain data. Changing an extension does not change the data. In this case, it was a JPEG file that had a doc extension, but it was indeed a picture the entire time. So we have the second half of our flag, ER_M3_71MB3R5 curly bracket. The other files that we carved here, we got the PDF and we have the JPEG file that we saw before. Now notice that the JPEG file that we carved originally, I can see that it too has some writing on it, but if I try and open it, it doesn't work. But I can still clearly see on the thumbnail that there's something. That's because this image has an embedded thumbnail. I can extract that into a valid JPEG file and try to view the contents of the picture, but it's intentionally designed to be very difficult to read, nigh illegible, if you just extract the thumbnail. I had many people come to me complaining that they extracted the file, but they can't read it, so it's, you know, not working. But no, that's by design. If all you found was the thumbnail, then my suspicion is that you used an automated tool and it carved out a valid JPEG, but it was just the thumbnail. But that's just a clue that you're looking in the right place. If you want to be able to view the image as it was intended, you need to repair it in order to open it up. Let's plop that into HXD and see what we get. So what we get here is clearly this is a JPEG file. I mean, the file extension was a JPEG, but as we just said, that doesn't mean anything. But this does have a JPEG file signature, FFD8FF. But remember, when we found this file, we found it because POCTF was in it, and it says at the end, POCTF not the end. So our clue is that this is not the complete file. It's enough of the file that it contains the thumbnail of the image, but it doesn't contain any of the other image data. So we need to find it. I did include a clue. I thought maybe it would be helpful. There's two things that you can do in order to find the rest of this file. You can either do a search in your preferred forensic tool for the EOF marker for a JPEG file, FFD9. Look for an end of file marker that doesn't have a corresponding file header, and then reassemble it. We did extract the PDF, and if we put that PDF here in our reader, we can see that right here we have POCTF 0.5C. So we have 0.5C here. Our clue told us that we are looking for 0.5C at the very least, even if we haven't yet figured out how to put the pieces together. So if we take our PDF and grab this data, we can look here at the very bottom. That is a JPEG end of file marker, FFD9, right here. So let's grab this, except of course for this unnecessary clue here. Copy this. Let's append it to our current file, beginning with this here. And let's save that and see what we get now. There we go. With both parts of the flag, we can now see POCTF UWSP shiver me timbers is the solution. Next, we move on to our crack category. We have here in the 100 point position. We mighty we meek, solved by only 65 participants. MS Excel document that has been file level encrypted. I've had to change the file extension, crack the password to find the flag. Hint, the password only contains alpha characters, no numbers, no special characters, and no spaces. All right, so for that, we're going to use John the Ripper. First, we need to extract that hash. I have the crack1.excel file here in my downloads. I'm going to pipe that out to hash.txt. All right, now that we have our hash, we can run John on that. Okay, and after a reasonable amount of time, let's see, how long did it take? 11 hours. We have a probable password from RockU. Now, I understand that the metric for a reasonable time is going to be different from person to person, and that you may not necessarily agree that that's reasonable, but I did design the cracking challenges to not be solved in a short amount of time. I got the impression from people who were writing me that there was an expectation that they'd be able to solve it in one way or another in basically an hour or so, and that is not my intention whatsoever. It was to have those cracking challenges take a long time to crack them. Maybe I'll revise that for the next year's contest, but most likely I will be leaving at least some of the cracking challenges as being taking an extended period of time, because next year I plan to release them in waves. So the first cracking challenges will probably take the longest time, and the contest will simply last a lot longer. That is our password, so when we open up the Excel file, we put that password in there, we have got it. Our level 200 cracking challenge. The Gentle Rocking of the Sun, solved by 381 participants. What we have here is a password-protected archive, a 7-zip file. Problem is I seem to have forgotten das Passwort. All I have is this post-it note on my monitor that says crack2 equals this. I mean, there's a couple of clues here. First of all, das Passwort is obviously German. And we have a value here that looks like a hash. So essentially the reason that this is slightly more difficult is because you're not going to find this word likely in RockU or any other English dictionary list because it is a German word, but it is a common German word nonetheless. As a matter of fact, it is so common that even if you go to any website, hashes.com, or any site that has hashed words other than just the English dictionary and common passwords, it will find it. So our password here is Zweichen for the archive. Now, where some people got tripped up wasn't in the password part. Some people got tripped up because they opened the archive and didn't display the folder structure of the archive in hierarchical order. You have to do that because notice our first directory here is 2023. Then we have a P, and if we're looking for a file that contains the flag, we are going to be looking for quite a long time because we just drill down into all of these subdirectories forever and ever until we arrive at the last one, which is empty. But if you look at the names of the folders, we have 2023 POCTF curly bracket EWSP underscore C411FO2N14 underscore D234M1N9 curly bracket. POCTF UWSP California Dreamin'. Our 300 level cracking challenge with desperation and need was solved by 52 participants. This one was difficult. It was actually meant to be difficult, but in the end I ended up having to make a major revision to this because the original form of the challenge turned out to be impossible. So let me explain what we've got here. Originally, I did not provide any clue as to what type of file this is. I simply said that this is a file. I don't know what it is. I can't remember the password. I don't know. I know the flag is in here, but I don't know what. The idea is that you would be able to find out it was a VeraCrypt container and then either find or create a solution to brute force the password, which is on RockU in this case. It was meant to take a long time. Again, the cracking challenges were not meant to be solved in an hour. These were meant to take the entire contest, potentially, which was a couple of weeks, right? But as people brought to my attention the fact that they were struggling with it, I went looking for the original source, the white paper that I used to identify VeraCrypt containers by data format. And I couldn't find it anymore. It looks like it was taken down, or maybe it was paywalled. I mean, it was an academic paper, so it might have been moved behind some JSTOR or some other paywall, unfortunately. So I had to give up the clue that it is a VeraCrypt container, and I had to let people know that there was a password for it, and give a hint. The password is alphanumeric. That's AZ09. Contains no special characters, and the first three characters are GUN. So with those clues, you no longer really have to spend a lot of time developing a solution or finding a solution. All you really need to do is just grep RockU for that, and you'll find there's only one or two passwords. And I think in this case, there's even only one that will apply. So even without using the clue as to the character set in our grep, we only get 6 passwords back, and only one of them starts with GUN. So that's going to be our password. The hardest cracking level challenge ended up being turned into one of the easiest because it was just simply impossible without the right information, and the right information was no longer available. So if I mount that and provide the correct password, we get flag.txt, quantity is not abundance. Moving right along, our reversing 100 challenge, as easy as it gets, solved by 339 participants. In this one, you have a PS1 file. It doesn't get much easier than this when it comes to reverse engineering. Here we have a secure PowerShell script. All you need to do is figure out the super secret passphrase to decrypt the flag. Here we have our PS1 file, re1.ps1, and it does seem to be using some kind of encryption here. We have an encrypt string function. Honestly, none of this matters. This is all sort of smoke and mirrors, although you can most likely reverse this in some fashion. Of course, the key is to work from the output backwards, right? So whatever these functions are doing, personally, I would not even begin there. Start at the back, start at the end, and work your way back. So what are we doing here? Right host, decrypted password is p decrypted. Where do we get p decrypted? From decrypt string, which takes p crypted, the password, and a password variable. We get the password variable from a read host, so we ask for a password, and here is our encrypted password. Now, we could attack this directly. I don't know what the likelihood is that we would get it, but I guess that's one way of looking at it. But we're supposed to read the password, right? So we have to enter in the correct password to decrypt this. Now, this means if we need to provide a password, we can potentially brute force it, I guess. We could maybe fuzz it or something, but it's even easier than that. To do, use strong password, Canadian soap opera. If we run this in PowerShell, please enter user password, Canadian soap opera. There's our flag. POCTF UWSP ad Victorium Wastelander. Now, they all aren't quite that easy. We have to get progressively harder, so our reversing 200 challenge, a tangled web we weave, is a little bit harder. The flag has been hidden in these assembly instructions, except I forgot how to decode it. If you figure it out, you get the flag. Here are the assembly instructions, and here is our encoded message. We have right here a bit of a clue. There is a XOR. We are XORing AL with something. So essentially, we just need to figure out what that is, and then we will have successfully reversed the encryption here. Again, this could be done by brute forcing. That's kind of the idea with the reversing challenge, is that even if you don't spend the time to actually reverse everything, that you can probably find another path to success. That was a feature, not a bug, in the reversing challenges, although I do think I might change that for future contests. All right, so if you take those assembly instructions and put them through a compiler, either NASM or there's plenty of online options here, as one at tutorials point, you'll see that the XOR operation completes, and we have our flag POCTF UWSP King Kong got nothing on me. Next, we have our 300-point reverse engineering challenge solved by 90 of our participants. Sunshine on filth is not polluted. For this one, log in with a valid username and PIN code, and this program will give you a shell. The username is easy to identify, but the PIN code is randomly generated. Here's a hint, but you'll need to work for it a bit. 2 hashed words, this and the other. All right, so put those hash values into your favorite decoder. They are only MD5. You'll find that the 2 words are uninitialized variables. So I hope that was a good enough clue. I'm going to take a bit of a shortcut here for you and show you the original C code. Here we have a username, 16 bytes. Auth code is here. People were trying to attack the pin generation function. They were trying to attack RAND, which was not invalid, but the server wasn't set up to give you the ability to do that. So you're going to run into a bit of a brick wall. You just don't have access to it like that. So it's actually simpler than that. So the clue uninitialized variables should tell you something, which is that if we go to our main function, the first thing we do is init, then we generate our code, which is here, just generates a random number, like legitimately, pseudo-random, but you know what I mean. Like it's not secretly another value. It is a random number, a randomized number. Then we configure our username. Username is here, where we will get our username, right? We get number 1 options, enter username, confirm username, none. If we choose 1, then we fill in our username variable. If we hit 2, then it prints out the value of temp. And that right there is an initialized variable. So here we have a Python script that uses pwn tools, and when we bring in pwn tools with our favorite reverse engineering software, we can find the offset for that leak, that temp variable, and we can find the offset for where the pin ought to be stored in memory, which is we are using a 16-byte variable for temp, which should be detectable in your reverse engineering program. Then we can establish a connection out to our target server. Then using pwn tools, we simply receive until we see that menu of options. We choose option 2, which we can see in the code is to confirm username. So that prints out the value of temp. And we get the username is. So we receive 2 bytes, and then we unpack that, 16 unpack, and get that password, and then you simply enter in a username and password, and you have solved the challenge. Moving right along to our OSINT challenges. Our 100-level challenge is All is Green and Comfort, solved by 70 of our participants. In this one, your subject is a former private investigator turned whistleblower. The only information you have is that they worked for a firm called Investigate, NVSTGT. Before they were let go, their termination is a mystery, except that you know they were posting secrets publicly to the company website. Once they were discovered, they were quickly fired, and the site was restored to normal. So this is not meant to be a difficult challenge. This is our 100-level challenge. So if you simply search for NVSTGT, you'll find that your first result most likely is going to be a site, nvstgt.com. If we go there, then we have a message on the front that tells us that, blah, 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 important allegations, malicious and coordinated attack, etc., etc., etc. That's a clue that we're kind of in the right place. And the fact that this is obviously a junky website that I use for all kinds of different strange challenges. And I did include a link to the Pointer Overflow CTF just so people were absolutely sure that they were in the right place. So if this is where we're looking for, you can surf around if you want to. You find that the interior pages are just bogus placeholder pages. There won't be a flag on those. The clue in the challenge is that the only information you have is that they worked for a firm before they were let go. Their termination is a mystery, except you know they were posting secrets publicly to the company website. So you know this is the website, but you know that they caught on and it's no longer up there. So we need to find a previous version of the site. Now, almost everybody was able to work this part out and know that you were supposed to go to the Wayback Machine and enter in this URL. And if you go to the main site, indeed, yes, there are some snapshots here. There's one here in 2024. That's 2023. Two in 2023. One at the beginning and one at the end. So we have one here, December 25th. That's after the contest began, so it can't be that one. So February 16th, perhaps there is a snapshot here. And I think most of you who had trouble with this one, you did look at all of these snapshots for nvstgt.com, right? Let's go to this February snapshot here. And we just get this warning here about being a bot. So let's go back farther. Okay, here's a snapshot from December 19th, 2021. We see that our message is not on here. The message about blah, 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 allegations and so on. So we don't see anything here. And so at this point, you can go back even farther in time to this other snapshot, but it's just not on the main page. So if you see that there's no message here, then this could be when the secrets are posted, but we have to go to those interior pages. It's not going to be right on the front website. So we have to dig in and see where our snapshots are for these. So if we start with data recovery, notice that the snapshots for the interior pages don't match up necessarily. It doesn't necessarily snapshot the entire site, the front and all interior pages. It will do them all differently because they're all different URLs, just indexes them all together. It's not here on data recovery. Try forensic services. There's nothing here on forensic services, but it's a different snapshot date. Let's try investigative services. Okay, I don't see it on investigative services, but I see that there are two snapshots, and it's given us the oldest one because it's the one that's closest to the 2021 snapshot that the main page led us to, or led us from. So let's try the other snapshot here in September 2023. Well, here we go. Investigative services, and there's our flag. Next, we will look at our 200 OSINT challenge, a great interior desert, solved by 225 of our participants. In this one, you are given the username of an associate of our subject. The flag is known to only one person who is a trusted confidant of your first subject. It's unknown how or why the two know each other, but your task will be to find the flag by finding subject 2 through subject 1. All we know about subject 1 is this information, a username on Mastodon Social. If you're not familiar with Mastodon, of course, they use the same @ system as, let's just say, some other social media sites. And since we have their @ we'll just go ahead and add that, @FreeJackMarigold. If we go there, we find the user hijack bric-a-brac, FreeJackMarigold at Mastodon Social. I'm a totally normal guy that just likes to tell it like it is. I've had some trouble with the law, but that's because I love freedoms and liberty. Joined May 31st, 2023. Mandela Effect, Pizzagate, Rothschild Conspiracy, Area 51, Libertarianism, Philosophy, Social Memia at Jock Bronson. Now, obviously, if we are on Mastodon Social, we see that there is an @FreeJackMarigold. We see that there's another here on another social media site. And, of course, the other social media site that uses the @ symbol most famously is Twitter. So if we go to twitter.com @Jock Bronson. We see another user, Big Old Ramen at Chalk Bronson. I'm a student at UWSP where I study cybersecurity. When I graduate, I plan to move to LA to be in movies and then maybe to Paris to be a writer. And here we have posting about the Mandela effect, the Berenstain Bears, which is just a horrible Photoshop. But we're looking for not this user. This user is our first subject. We're supposed to find the flag by finding somebody through our first subject. So let's see. We could go through who he's following, followed by. But Senior Space Cakes followers, you know. So let's go to Senior Space Cakes. And we see another social media link, Instagram.com Senior Space Cakes. Do we have any other social media links, or is that it? I think that's it. And if you managed to make it this far, the flag is apparent. It is in a picture posted on Instagram, POCTF, UWSP. The rest is ash. Next, we have our OSINT 300 level challenge, a pilgrim in an unholy land, solved by 42 of our participants. In this one, you are given an archive, and at the end of this trail, you're supposed to find a password for that archive. You are told that the password is a phone number, no parentheses, no space, no dash, which means that if you were so inclined, you probably could brute force this password. It is a 7-zip archive, and you could probably do it that way. And if you did, as far as I'm concerned, that's just fine. But let's walk through it the way that it was laid out for us. So we have 5 steps here. Our first step is to find the location in this image. So we will do a image search. Doing an image search, we get plenty of results back. This is a fairly unique location. We can see right here, for example, the Portland Tribune has done an article here about a Hillsboro man. Oregon man turns 727 Boeing jet airplane into a house, and Hillsboro airplane house, so on and so forth. So we do a search for Hillsboro airplane house. We get an Oregon Live here as our link as our first hit. Take a closer look at this. But we're looking for the phone number, according to this. Use the phone number as north and west coordinates. So we're looking for the phone number for this place. And here we have a phone number right here on Google for us. Now our next step tells us that we are to use that phone number as north and west coordinates to find the picture below, which is a fairly nondescript, sandy, rocky, scrubby kind of area. I do warn you that it will take quite a bit of massaging to make it fit. So here's a hint to go with the picture below, and I tell you it's in Africa. Now you can narrow this down a bit with a little bit of deductive reasoning. For example, for our north latitude coordinates, the highest that we have here is 36.719, give or take, in Algeria, or possibly here in Tunisia a little bit farther, but right around there, 36, high 36, low 37s, down to negative 34, give or take, or 35, at the tip here of Cape Horn, which means that both 15 and negative 15 north would be in our range. Negative 15 north would get us, yeah, right around here, give or take. This this band here, Mozambique, Zambia, Angola, that would be about negative 15. But of course, that is in a very green area, and that doesn't match up with our image. Whereas if we go with positive 15, that puts us, right over here, give or take, right around this band here, just at the edge of the desert, and that definitely makes more sense with our picture. So for our north coordinates, we're looking at positive 15, and again, we get that from our phone number, which begins with 1503 as the area code. So 15. It couldn't be 150 because then we'd be out of Africa. It couldn't be 1 because then we'd be out of Africa. So it has to be 15, and it most likely is positive 15. As for our west coordinates, if we go to the farthest west we can go here in Africa, we get a negative 16. If we go as far as we can to the east, and we'll even go all the way here past the Gulf of Aden, we see that that is 50. So we have 15 and negative 15 as possibilities. So let's go with positive 15 here. That puts us, hereabouts, give or take, in Chad. And I'll move up a little bit here. So let's just get a little closer. All right, that's close enough for us to zoom in. Let's see what we're working with here. We'll go to satellite view. So right about here or so. Yeah, give or take. Within a couple of minutes, certainly. Except this kind of looks like our image, I suppose. But nothing really in the area that strikes me as distinctively similar. I'm looking for these, like, bands of foliage or darker rocks, whatever they happen to be. There's a couple of those here, but they're not bands, they're just smaller pockets. This definitely seems like an area that's more high desert than low desert. Okay. So if it's not positive 15, it must be negative 15, which puts us somewhere on this side, because we're at negative 16 over here on the coast, so we're going to be pretty close to that. Yeah, negative 15 puts us here in Senegal, and right now I'm at 15.86 on our north, so we're pretty close, more or less, here in this area to what we're looking for. And we can see in a fairly short order, yes, this looks much, much more like the area that we were looking for. So now that we're in the right area, let's massage those numbers a bit. We know that it's supposed to be negative 15 for our western coordinates and positive 15 for our north coordinates. And if we use the rest of the number, which was 1503, etc., etc., well, sooner or later, we find more or less this general area, and you don't have to get very close. You don't have to be precise with these coordinates. I mean, once you get your general latitude and longitude and you're in the basic area, it's going to be, from the perspective of a satellite, a very, very insignificant amount of moving around in order to get the exact number. So if you, like, for example, this view that I have right here, this view spans probably a couple of degrees in either direction. So if you're close enough, you're close enough. But if we put the pin there relatively close to where our phone number tells us to, we get, let's see, this is Barkedji, Senegal, but the clue says to the northwest of the pin in the picture is a region. If you swap the first letter of the first word and the first letter of the second word, you might think it's a restaurant of some kind. Now, this clue is just meant to kind of let you know that you're in the right place, right? It's another way of determining that you've gotten the correct coordinates. So if we go northwest just a hair here, let's see what we get. Here we go. To the northwest, the first region that we see from our pin is a region called Belly Diori. And if we swap the first letter of the first word and the first letter of the second word, we get Delhi Biori. But if we search for Delhi Biori with our next clue, which is here, we are supposed to find that restaurant, and we're looking for a person that has a name very close to Delhi Biori. I've left enough context clues here in our screenshot to let you know that you're looking for someone on Facebook. And if we do a people search for Facebook, we find somebody with a name very close to Delhi Biori. Delilah Biori on Facebook, and we're looking for her town. Should we scroll down? Lae, Papua New Guinea. So our next clue, we are looking for Brian Bell in Lae, Papua New Guinea, and then from there looking for the brand of in-ear monitors that professionals trust. So if we do a search here in Lae for Brian Bell, just on Google Maps, we see there's Brian Bell Chemicals, Brian Bell Plaza, Brian Bell Service Center, Brian Bell Agriculture, and of those, clearly in our image, this is some kind of shopping center, so I certainly hope we're not looking in Brian Bell Chemicals for something like that. If we take our street view and drop them here in Brian Bell Plaza, there is no walkable street view, but there is a single image. And if we check out street view, we see here indeed is our image. Now, looking for the brand of in-ear monitors that professionals trust, these two stores here, they sell your electronic accessories and so on. They both seem to cater to mobile phones, but they certainly are a large number of audio companies here as well. And there's this Ultimate Ears poster directly outside, right next to the Ultimate Ears display in the store. So let's look for that. So here on the Ultimate Ears site, just ultimateears.com, I'm going to scroll around here a little bit, but we are looking for something that indicates that they're the brand of in-ear monitors that professionals trust. And if we look a little bit, there is a UE Pro site. So we're apparently on the consumer site. Let's check out the Pro site. Universal in-ear monitors. We'll scroll around here. There's a simple reason why the top world's performers trust Ultimate Ears. So this could be the right place. That sounds like it's similar to what we're looking for. But the clue tells us that we're looking for a tale of the inception of their company. So if we can find that, we can certainly confirm that this is the right place. And we are most likely to find the story of their company's inception on either their About page, or in this case, they have a Heritage page, which if we take a look here, it says Ultimate Ears' journey began in the back of a Van Halen tour bus in 1995. So we have the name of a band in that state, so California, where they began their company. There are 2 streets named after that band in 2 different towns. You're looking for the lane in the city that starts with S. So back once again to Google Maps. We're looking for Van Halen, and it's a lane, so LN. We can see that there is a Van Halen court in Lathrop, California. But the city that starts with S is Stockton, California. So we zoom over there. As the clue states, we look for the place where the single musician, Jimi Hendrix in this case, curves and turns into the band, Van Halen. And it tells us to drop a pin on the corner, right here where the pin is dropped. And we can even see from the street view, there's a white vehicle there. The white vehicle is our van, and that van contains the phone number that is the password to our archive. Moving on, we move to our Web 100 challenge. We rest upon a single hope, solved by 650 participants. So the challenge text we have here is a quote from the film Ghostbusters asking, "Are you the keymaster?" We are taken to a very simple page. Are you the keymaster? And if we enter something in and submit, it appears as a key attribute in our URL. So this is a web challenge, but it could be considered, I suppose, a reverse engineering challenge, because if we see what's going on here, let's go ahead and be the source. That might be easier. We can see that it's simply submitting and then calling the Zool function. So we can easily reverse this here. Really all we need to do is figure out ultimately what we're going for here. Here is Zool. And Zool, if key equals V, and then it does a bunch of things here. We could sit here and reverse that, but if we work backwards, well, we need to figure out what V is. Okay, here's what V is. var V equals gozer with these attributes. These attributes are P, which is right here, which is navigator MIME types plus navigator do not track. O is our navigator device memory. C, navigator vendor and navigator user agent. And T, navigator product plus the value of P. And then F, the value of O plus C plus P, all put together. So essentially, the value that it's looking for, V, depends entirely on us. Whatever our browser is, our navigator MIME type, do not track, device memory, vendor, user agent, product, all of that determines what the valid value for V is, and theoretically speaking, that could be any number of different values depending on what browser you're using and so on and so forth. But we can quite easily derive this if we want to. The JavaScript to do so obviously is already all over here. So let's just copy this. And let's just run that function. Let's go to the console. And we get this value here, a negative number in my case. Copy that, enter that, and we get our flag. POCTF, I am all that there is of the most real. Our Web 200 challenge, the Vigil of the Ceaseless Eye, is solved by 377 of our participants. The contestants allow me to take this opportunity to debut the hottest new social media platform on the planet. I call it Manykins. There is also zero chance that it has any vulnerabilities that might allow me to find the flag. I did not originally provide this, but so many of our participants seemed to be confused. Typically speaking, I am aware that DIR scanning, DIR busting, is not a valid approach in CTFs because of the, well, availability attack. Essentially, that results is all these participants are hammering that server. But in this case, it was expected to be part of the challenge. The idea was that participants would simply understand that they would need to fly low and slow in order to avoid being blacklisted, and many didn't. But I also expected participants, if they did get blacklisted, to be able to switch to VPN to a different location and continue trying. But many participants weren't prepared to do that. I suppose next time I might do something different. I'm not entirely sure. I'm still considering this one. But in order to prevent that from continually happening, I did eventually reveal the path to our flag here. So it is under secret flag.pdf. This is our site here, simply a basic site where we can leave posts and so on. And if we check to see if we can do HTML injection, indeed, our bold tags work at least. Can we do, are any of our elements restricted? No. Okay, so if we can do A elements, can we do JavaScript? Sure enough, we can. Now, from this point, if we can do JavaScript, it's just a question of whether or not we can find the location. Of course, we can, because we have the path now. So, what are our options? Well, my personal favorite in this case is, I mean, you could, any HTTP GET request at that location will do just fine. My personal favorite is an XML HTTP request, and I have this stored in my own personal cheat sheet. So we'll change the location here to go to our flag, and of course we would have had to scan in order to get that. But clicking on that will allow us to leak the flag. And next we have our 300-point web challenge. Quantity is not abundance, solved by 164 of our participants. So this, like the other challenge, I eventually ended up providing the path to the flag. Again, people were having issues with scanning or getting blacklisted from scanning too aggressively. So with the path, this becomes an extremely arbitrary challenge, and it was an easy challenge to begin with. The link takes you to the following site here. And originally I had planned for this one to have multiple ways to solve it. It's meant to be very easy, but at the very least, you can write your own function, look at the source, except this time you're going to have to drill down a little bit farther to find the JS file where the tic-tac-toe is being played. And you can edit your function here to check cookie to dump the contents of the flag file once you find it. Of course, we know exactly where it is, but truthfully, just as before, while you can't access the flag directly, you can essentially make a GET request for it and you'll get it just fine. So whether you choose to go about it the way that I have obviously laid the breadcrumbs for, or you choose to do it your own way, it does not matter. I consider all solutions essentially to be valid here in this case. But so essentially, if you are able to dump the contents of the flag file into any document which you are able to read, for example, our cookie as such, and run it, you will see the flag POCTF UWSP. I have to insist. Moving on, we have our 100-point steganography challenge. Absence makes the heart go yonder, solved by 534 of our participants. Sometimes the oldest and simplest tricks can be the most fun. Here's an old Stego tactic that requires no special software, just a little knowledge and maybe a keen eye. And I have here a GIF, and if we take that, so if we take that file and we put it into File Analyzer here, for example, a keen eye would mean essentially that you import this into, just view the hex stream here of it. We do have the file signature here for a GIF. We did expect that. But if we, well, let's do a string scan. That's probably a faster way of doing this. We'll sort by length and take a look. Here you go. At the very bottom, our longest string is flag txt, and there is the value. POCTF heard you the first time. If you're not familiar with the method that's used here in this case, basically this is just the Windows, this is just a straight copy command. If you take two files and you concatenate them in copy and send it to one output file, in this case it's simply the first GIF file, which you're actually seeing here, plus a zip file that contains flag.txt. All of them concatenated into steg1.gif, which is what you download here. It just basically merges them together, and certain file formats are resilient to that kind of insertion. And in this case, there was another way we could solve this. Of course, because it's just an unencrypted zip file with a text file in it, we can just read it like that. But if we take our file and instead of using our whatever our native handler for GIFs is, if we right-click and instead open with an archive handler, here's stego1.gif. It's just that instead of double-clicking it and opening it with my default GIF handler, which is Infran Viewer, I open it instead with an archive handler, in this case 7-zip. It still will read it just fine as an archive and will still provide us with the ability to extract out of it just fine. Next, we have our 200-point steganography challenge, An Invincible Summer, solved by 54 of our participants. I seem to have misplaced the flag for this challenge. I know that it's in one of these files. I just can't remember which one, and why I would have two copies of each image in different formats. I swear, I'd forget my head if I didn't have SQL constantly orbiting it. The archive password, POCTF 2023. I had to add a hint. This challenge is giving a lot of people trouble. I've double-checked everything, and I can unequivocally say it's all pixel perfect. So in this case, the first major clue before providing the hint was the fact that there are two copies of each image, and the copies, well, two of the copies are in the same format. The output is in a particular format. And then finally, the fact that you have SQL orbiting your head is a reference to the very famous logo with this steganography method. I later on added the hint here to give people an even bigger clue as to the method that was used, and it is a package called Pixel. So here I have opened Pixel, and you can see, yes, SQL orbiting your head here. That might make more sense once you're familiar with the method here. As for the pictures themselves, what we get are several bitmap images. So we have BAT BMP and BAT PNG. We have cassette BMP and cassette JPEG, CD BMP, CD JPEG, hand BMP, hand JPEG, key BMP, key JPEG, lock BMP, lock PNG, mittens BMP, mittens JPEG, rug bitmap, rug JPEG, Topochki bitmap, Topochki JPEG, VHS bitmap, VHS JPEG, Walkman bitmap, and Walkman JPEG. So every pair of images has a bitmap image to correspond with either a JPEG or a PNG, that's your second clue, the fact that there are two images. So Pixel is a steganography suite that will take a bitmap image and embed a message in it. So the fact that each of them has a pair of images and one of that pair is always a bitmap is meant to be another clue. And I have several of these images that have embedded non-flag messages that was intended to give you a clue that you were on the right track, even if you chose the wrong pair. So if I choose bat, for example, and I want to decrypt, I need to choose the corresponding bat PNG image and decrypt. And here is a valid message, but obviously not our flag. Here come that red herring. So now if we want to decrypt, let's say we choose, how about the next image here in our folder, how about cassette? And we want to pick the corresponding image, we'll see that cassette is not, we see that the JPEG is not a valid supported type for Pixel. As a matter of fact, there's only one other pair that does have a supported type, which is lock. It's the only other PNG here. So clearly we have narrowed this down here. If we choose the lock bitmap and decrypt with the lock PNG, we get our flag. POCTF UDSP, I have no mouth and I must scream. So I felt like this one was fair, although one participant did fairly raise the fact that with steganography, figuring out the method is extremely important. I thought Pixel was a bit more well-known than it is. I mean, I still think it's fair because with a little bit of checking and some maybe some searching with the clues that were given, I think you would have come upon Pixel in a search, and certainly after I added the hint, I basically gave it away. Moving on to our steganography 300-point challenge, solved by 58 of our participants between secrets and lies. Picture Stego sure is a lot of fun. It's not exactly a party conversation starter, but once someone mentions hiding data, I can't help but open up that big can of beans. Here you try, and you are given an AI-generated image here of a can of beans, or at least so it seems. So this one, I think the clues are... All right, so here we have our beautiful bean can, and I admit this one was tough. I did not give many clues on the method, or anything. I mean, this is the 300 level challenge, so I don't know. I felt like for those proficient in steganography, this might present a challenge. So essentially, if you're familiar with steganography and you've actually read some fairly recent papers on the subject, you might have had a better than average fighting chance at this one, but if not, then you might not even know what to do here. Suffice to say, without turning this into a 2 or 3 hour long lecture on image steganography, if you examine the image closely, you will notice that there is an anomaly here. That anomaly is your clue as to the method. If you notice the top row of pixels here, perhaps you can't see it on the video, but they're present. Many people got hung up with the colors here in the corner. That is actually an artifact of the AI generation and not of the steganography. So that was a little bit of a red herring. If you recognize this method and you search for tools that are available to do it, or if you've done steganography and CTFs before, you've probably already used this tool. But one of the best that you can find out there at the moment is Steg Online here. And if we take our image, we'll drop it into the tool here, and we will we will extract files and data. So since I felt identifying the method of steganography and the tool was hard enough, I left all of the settings bog standard, checked only the first box here, and if we hit go, we see our flag POCTF UWSP, more human than human is our motto. Moving on to our exploit challenges. First we have our 100-point challenge, My Friend, a Loathsome Worm, solved by 161 of our participants. This one should be quite straightforward. Can you trick this program into popping a shell without even bothering to overwrite the return address? Why pick the lock when you can simply remove the hinges? You are provided a copy of the binary, but you're expected to find the flag on the remote server. Again, the remote server was shut down following the close of the contest, but I will still reveal the solution in terms of what is done. Okay, so if we throw our binary here into a decompiler, we can follow through the code logic here and find that, well, first we are presented with a welcome screen. Welcome, you are logged in as, and then a user. This user is identified by local 38 here. We can see after that we get a do while nested here. Printf, how can I help you? Again, referring to the user. Again, local 38. We can either change our username, switch to root account, or start a debug shell, and then we make our choice. And if we make our choice of 1, then we enter a new username. It replaces the value of local 38 with whatever that happens to be. If we choose 2, which is to switch to root account, all it does is prints out a statement. It doesn't actually even do a check here. Sorry, root account is currently disabled. And if we start a debug shell, it does a check here. If ivar1 equals 3, which is our 3 choice here for a debug shell, then if local 1c equals 999, sorry, guests aren't allowed to use the debug shell. But if local 1c equals hex 539, then it will start a debug shell for us. So it becomes a matter of essentially finding the location for local 1c in memory and then overwriting it. And luckily we have an opportunity to adjust the variable here for username. And that should be all you need really to get your wheels turning as far as figuring out what our step is here. I can show you a sample script. All right. So here is an example of a working solution here done with Pwn tools and Python. So we will, of course, first connect to the challenge. We have the offset from Ghidra, the number of bytes from the username variable to the debug flag variable. Debug user, of course, as we saw also in the decompiler here, is hex 539 or leet to hex. Then we will print that string out just for feedback. We send line 1 to rename our user. We enter as our username a string to the offset, which is, again, 28 bytes. And then we pack 64, the hex 539, and insert that at the end of our string, which overwrites our 999 user ID with the debug user ID. Then we just wait for the menu to come back, and then we can manually manipulate it to go to that debug shell and it pop that shell for us. Next, we have our 200 level exploit challenge, a gilded lily, solved by 67 of our participants. Years ago, there was a neat little bug discovered in OpenSSL which became known as Heartbleed, the world's first bug with a name. Heck, it even had a logo. I have attempted to recreate something thematically similar for you to Heartbleed. There are plenty of ROP gadgets here, but not a single bin shell string. Darn it. Maybe you could put bin shell somewhere in memory yourself as you send the payload. If so, it sure would be convenient if one of those registers was already pointing to it. If you could only find some ROP gadgets to shuffle that register's value into RDI. And I think that is hint enough. So this one essentially requires building out a ROP chain. And in this case, I will actually share instead, probably more useful to share the source code. So you can see what is actually happening. It's actually quite simple, and in a decompiler, this should be relatively. In a decompiler, this is relatively easy to decipher. Simple do, while, and then get and write. The idea being that you will send the appropriate output to move the data as the clue says. Insert your shellcode and find a ROP gadget to shuffle the value into RDI and call. And our final challenge, the exploit 300 level, time is but a window, solved by 114 of our participants. Think small and simple. No fancy ROP chains or shellcode necessary. A single byte should be sufficient. To begin, I will once again share the source code, although this is visible in a decompiler. Seeing the source makes it much less ambiguous, of course. So there is a greet function. Hello, what's your name? Nice to meet you, and then echoes back. Here is our win function, which will start a shell for us. That is what we are going to, and our main function merely calls greet and returns. Here is the function where we get the string for name. And all we need do is find our offset, overwrite a single byte, and then it will return to the win function for us. And that is all we need to do, just a single byte. And that concludes all of the challenges that were available for the 2023 Pointer Overflow CTF contest. In general, the contest was a success. I know I had a lot of fun. I hope that you did too. There are certainly some things we're going to be doing differently for future challenges, so we hope that you will join us for the 2024 Pointer Overflow CTF. The next Pointer Overflow CTF will begin September 15th, 2024, and will run to January 19th, 2025. The website for the 2023 contest soon will be down for revisions, and when it returns, you can find the 2024 Pointer Overflow CTF contest at the same site, pointeroverflowctf.com, sometime later this summer. So bookmark that. Feel free to sign up. Once again, it will be free and open to all. There will be a prize for the winners, and this year I'm planning on offering a prize for both our first and second place winners. For 2023, our congratulations once again goes out to the Team HCS, who completed all 27 challenges and earned all 5,400 points. See you next year, everyone. Take care, and until then, happy hunting.